Have you ever built emotional walls with others? We do that for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's for healthy things that we need to set healthy boundaries, but other times we begin to build walls with others because of fear, not wanting to be vulnerable, a sense of not wanting to put ourselves out there. That's a risk with vulnerability. And then sometimes we've based those walls of between ourselves and others on mistrust or being like, ooh, I don't know what your motives are, of questioning what's up with you, of being suspicious about others. And so how do we deal with those types of walls? So many types of walls we build, but how do we deal with the walls where it's built upon mistrust or misperception, or it's like, I don't want to think, I can't help but think negative about someone else. Like we get into that cycle. And so how can we find a better way? Is there a better way? Because my guess is you just want to be happy. You want to be happy. You want to enjoy life. You want to feel like you belong. You want to know that you're loved. You want to be surrounded by good people who love you and care for you. And you want to be able to show up for others in the same way. And so how often do the walls that we build actually kind of hinder all of that from happening, or stifle it, or even make it impossible? So for today, I've got Proverbs 9:12, and it's kind of helpful in thinking through this. Proverbs is all about practical wisdom, and 9:12 gives us kind of a perspective of when this happens with the walls, the emotional walls. If you are wise, it is to your benefit. If you are cynical, you will bear it alone. Wisdom understands boundaries. Wisdom understands it's knowledge, but you're using that knowledge to help to draw together for a greater good. Whereas the cynical part of that is really important, because being cynical means that we mistrust, that we think the worst of others, that we are suspicious of others. And when we start from a place like that, it can be hard to build relationships. It can be hard to get to know others. And one of the things to keep in mind is this kind of stuff creeps in real slow. Maybe you're like, am I cynical? But how many of us really know our neighbors? Because, well, I don't know them. So why would I? Can I trust my neighbors? I don't know. How many of us become a little bit suspicious when somebody walks down the street and stops at our house and kind of notices and looks at it, and we're like, hey, what's up with that? How often do we feel that suspicion, those misconceptions, those jumping to already like worst case scenarios? How often do we struggle with thinking the worst or the negative of others? Because for Proverbs, it's like you may end up alone. If that's where we stay stuck, if we don't resist those things or push back against them. And so how might we push back against that kind of notion of being skeptical or suspicious of everyone and their motives? Well, how often when we feel that creeping in, what might it mean for us to stop and go, wait a minute, I don't want somebody to think the worst of me, that I'm out to get somebody. And so maybe that other person would really like it if I don't do that with them, right? So thinking about ourselves, do we want other people to just assume the worst about who we are at any given moment? And so why not extend that grace and that love and that understanding to those we don't know? And to begin to resist those notions, because when we resist those notions, we begin to move into wisdom. And wisdom for Proverbs is all about being connected to God and about thriving and about practical boots on the ground kind of stuff of going, okay, how can I thrive in this world? How can I feel like I belong? How can I cultivate love? How can I have a life that is well lived? And that comes here in a sense of, all right, what are the things, the suspicions, the mistrust that we really need to resist jumping into? the sense of what wisdom can do for us, it's one of those things that the philosophers studied, but it's also psychologists look at it. And there was this great kind of explanation from Psychology Today about wisdom. Psychologists tend to agree that wisdom involves an integration of knowledge, experience, and deep understanding, as well as a tolerance for the uncertainties of life. There's an awareness of how things play out over time, and it confers a sense of balance. So think about that. Those kinds of things actually resist that cynicism, actually resist immediately putting up those emotional walls that really could be hindering or destroying relationships, or even just keeping them from even growing and blossoming into something beautiful. And so how will we take that wisdom? How do we cultivate that wisdom for ourselves and push against that cynicism? Because none of us want that feeling of alone. None of us want others to think the worst of us. So why think the worst of others? None of us really want to sit in that negativity, because all it does is take energy from us. And so what wisdom will you begin to cultivate as you resist those emotional walls that are so easy to put up? Pray with me. Loving God, may we choose the path of wisdom this day. May we lay cynicism aside and be more willing to take up compassion, to be thoughtful with our words, to take actions that facilitate peace. May we be slow to anger, quick to listen, ready to see the best in others, and gain the knowledge and understanding for how each of us can create a life overflowing with joy. Amen. Have a good one.